So our environment is artificial. Doge, Trump wanting to come in, do some cuts. Think about a crypto reserve. How can 21 million Bitcoin back an economy that rips through $1 trillion of new debt every 100 days? Is coin supposed to be worth $1 billion? Because then we would have some liquidity that we could augment our financial disreality with. So moving entire human race onto a cryptocurrency system sounds horrifying to me. It doesn't sound like it's going to repair anything. It sounds like it's just going to continue to be a world of uncertainty and chaos because no one has ever engineered any of this before. No one's been here before. Every day that passes is a day where no one has done this business type of dealings before.
Welcome to another RTD interview. Today, I'm excited to have returning guest, Mr. Paul Stone, the founder of Colonials Metals Group. And today he's joined us to share his thoughts on a variety of subject matter. And it's been a minute since we've last connected, but we've had more revelation as to where we're at now as a country and where things appear to be heading. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting his thoughts as well as just market updates, as well as his thoughts on precious metals and everything in between. As always, Paul does a good job of elaborating in great detail with the great analogies and everything else. Let me bring him on here. Paul, how are you doing, my good friend?
I'm great. I'm glad to hear I have good analogies. How are you?
I'm doing good, my friend, doing good. Looking forward to connecting. I think the last time we touched was before the election, and we were concerned about where things would end up. But it looks like things, I guess, came along a lot smoother than anticipated, to what somewhat considered to be surprised. I was extremely surprised. But nevertheless, we're here, and a lot of developments since then. And a lot of people in the audience believe that it's 50-50 for the most part. Some people believe that our country will be able to return to some sense of normalcy given the previous administration's issues. But then again, there are some out there that are skeptical, such as myself, that believe that based upon the numbers, the math still doesn't add up to where I'm not quite sure how he's going to be able to pull this off. And what I mean off by just reducing the debt, trimming some of the fat, created a whole new department, the Doge department, and everything like that. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts because those are things that didn't exist prior to our last discussion. But you did a good job of sharing some thoughts on this article here, the MAGA, please, thank you. And so you highlighted on some things before we had the recent developments. But I guess let's just start off. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking about? What concerns you, excites you? Just let us have it. I'm curious to know.
I was blessed to be able to attend AFPI's celebration, American First Policy Institute, started by the great Larry Kudlow. I was at Mar-a-Lago just a few days after the election results were in, and I was blessed to be there. And I can just tell you that there's an incredible excitement amongst everyone there that things are going to spin at a much higher vibration financially, and things are also going to get locked down. I don't really think that there's a huge angst against people immigrating to America, just doing it in an orderly fashion, doing it in a way that makes sense and fits around the people that are already here and doesn't disrupt their lives or cause them any headaches. But the border being closed, tariffs, which is another way of throwing up a border. A tariff is saying, we're going to make it expensive for your stuff to get here so you don't harm the stuff that's already being made here that's trying to continue or even grow back from what we've lost from our manufacturing base. So those things are going to be very good. When it comes to Doge, the cost cutting, the efficiency thing, they're definitely going to be able to, and I at least believe they will be able to make some cuts. They'll be able to find in government. But where that plays out to the people is a little bit about what the article is on Substack.com. If people were to search that, Substack.com, and then just type in the search, The Paul Stone. And my articles, I put one up about once a month, will show if you're interested. What do you think the election results are going to lead to in the first year or so?
Great question. I do believe that things will start off to be somewhat questionable just because recent activity with Biden okaying those missiles to be launched into Russia escalates things. So my anticipation, it all depends upon Trump and I guess Putin being able to come together and some type of presidential transition agreement to hold off, because if this Ukrainian situation is escalated, which it appears that it might, then we could be headed into the World War III that everyone is in fear of, including myself. And that could be very detrimental to the markets. Of course, gold and silver as a result of that might shoot to numbers we haven't seen, or there could be a major sell-off. It's to be determined. But thinking out long term, then the idea of our country getting back into some type of sound footing sounds promising. But yet there's always some type of wrinkle in plans these days, especially when it comes to disrupting or trying to unravel the mess that it has been intentional, because it's a part of our system with our central banking policy, the fiscal deficits, and those are things that are on my mind. So I don't try to think too far ahead. I keep it one step at a time. And as of lately, I guess the crypto space appears to be positioned as something to distract people and to excite people. We got the Bitcoin strategic reserve narrative that's out there. I got my concerns with that as well. It's a never ending subject matter, it seems. But I guess given all that, what stood out the most from what I just mentioned?
That you're describing, we're constantly in new territory. When we look at humanity for thousands of years, since the pyramids to maybe the 60s, 50s, nearby World War II, everything was not new. It was workers showed up at work, made stuff, got paid, went home and spent money around town. And that's just how it always was. And that was predictable. There was no Federal Reserve in these reserve currency countries before. There was never thinking that they could manage financial weather, if you will. Push on this button, pull on that lever, wait a few months, do something else. Just all the games. I just think that Trump coming, he will run things like a business. What's tough and it needs to happen, I wish it could have happened with Reagan's tax cuts. I wish that could have been followed up with someone that was keen to how we needed to maybe go back on the gold standard. Maybe after Reagan, you could say, oh, we had Carter's crazy inflation. That was from leaving the gold standard, in my opinion, from everything I've read. The world's never had that kind of inflation before. There's a lot of decisions that could have been a long time ago. So now you think, can Trump save it all? And you think, oh, he's going to do cuts. Is that good? It is great. It's great for maybe having the dollar live a bit longer than it was going to. It's a resource, the dollar, right? So if you create it artificially or faster than the economy would create it by itself through economic normal, unmessed around with, unsteroid injected growth, you would have something sustainable and the dollar would last for maybe 500, 1,000 years. But it's not going to, because the government has just done so much damage to it. It's only the buying power of it's only 3 cents. So when you go into cuts, you'll print less money, but that means the economy goes without. If it took 100 gallons of gas to get from point A to point B, and you're only going to fuel the truck with 90 gallons of gas, you're not going to make it. When you look at Biden's last budget, or even Trump's, or Obama's, or Bush's, every year their budget grew bigger. They needed more money because the people that put the budget together are saying, our bills are increasing. This is getting worse. It's not getting better, and it's going to continue to worsen. Sadly, the government thought, while I'm in power, we'll just keep things from exploding. I won't be here in 4 or 8 years. And it can explode down the road. And that's, to me, is evil. When you have a job, to do the damn job, tell the damn truth, come to the American people who you work for and let us know that Nixon's decision caused some disruptions in reality and we need to get back to reality, or eventually we'll live in a humongous disreality that will explode at some point, because how long can a fish live out of water, right? You can hook it up to a garden hose, but the minute you take that away, it's not a fish anymore either, and it perishes. So our environment is artificial. Doge, Trump wanting to come in, do some cuts. Think about a crypto reserve. How can 21 million Bitcoin back an economy that rips through $1 trillion of new debt every 100 days? Is coin supposed to be worth $1 billion? Because then we would have some liquidity that we could augment our financial disreality with. It just seems so ridiculous to me. One, it's not real. It can't transact on much. It's not mainstream. No one's getting paid in it. Companies aren't doing the books in Bitcoin. How can you do the books in something that's worth 100,000 now and might be worth 70,000 in a few months, or 30,000 or $1 million? That's not stability. What do you?
I agree. But then again, I try not to be conspiratorial in nature, but then again, I'm being a skeptic, being very cynic of everything. I like to look at things from a standpoint of the way that the world has evolved slowly but surely towards this digital transition. It doesn't surprise me one bit that Bitcoin was 15 years ago now, happened in the midst of a great financial crisis, and all of a sudden now, prior to or during a potential of our system in general, there happens to be another distraction solution that has been positioned strategically for this, and I refer to it as the greatest or biggest distractions to couple the greatest monetary reset as well as reshuffling the deck that we've ever witnessed, because what we're witnessing is global. Every nation is also experiencing the same issues. So it doesn't surprise me one bit. But what does bothers me is how, as a country, we're supposed to have the largest gold reserves. 8,300 or so tons, Fort Knox, as well as some of the other central banks' vaults, but that's not being mentioned. But then we have Senator Loomis wants to sell our nation's gold to Bitcoin. So I'm thinking, if we already have the most gold reserves, why not just revalue the statutory $42 an ounce and bring it up to something more realistic to be able to pay off some debt? But then again, I know gold is not a part of the overall equation of the system, but that's just one of the questions I would ask one of our political figures. What about gold? What about getting on something sound? But again, it doesn't surprise me. And then on the screen here, if I can share this with you real quick, here we have the Bitcoin Act of 2024 been put forth, 7 steps. And if I zoom in here, if I can, can, let me zoom in. I'll just briefly call them off to you. It says establish strategic Bitcoin reserve and utilize our storage facilities to hold them. It says purchase 200,000 C per year for 5 years to accumulate 1 million total and hold for 20 years. Proof of reserves. And I'm thinking, like, if you want to have a proof of reserve, it's a publicly visible ledger, which we can all see. But then again, we can't audit the Fed or audit Fort Knox to make sure the gold is still there. That's something that would be a concern to me. And then you have consolidate the current holdings and voluntarily state participation, offset costs, and all this other stuff that sounds very patriotic in nature. But then again, they do not address our gold. And once again, coincidence, intentional, accident. That's where I stop right there.
And I mentioned at the top that humanity, of course, was altered based off what Nixon did by unhooking its government budget source from tax revenue to its ability to print money and therefore creating like its own power supply. Like the government used to ask us for its electricity. They would get scraps from the economy in the way of taxes. And what Nixon created was the ability for the government to hook its budget to its own power supply. It didn't have to check with anyone, and it could draw as much power theoretically as it wanted to, and it has. But eventually the resource of that electricity that electrifies the government and its ability to grow into this enormous beast that it is today, that resource will be over. So here's a couple comparisons. I use the gasoline, the diesel. If you need 100 gallons of diesel to make the journey from A to B and you only end up with 90 gallons, you aren't making it. What that means to the economy is the economy won't make it. It literally has to have every printed dollar it's been getting. There's a reason for that. It's called bills. If you don't pay the bills, you default. If you default, you lose reserve currency status. So that is one hell of a hard stop. That's one hell of a rock in a hard place. So Trump comes in, talks about new financial engineering. There's all these ideas about crypto. Why the hell use Bitcoin? Why is it coin? Just because it goes up so much? Because it grabs everyone's attention? It's a sugar high. If I can have cotton candy and s'mores too, daddy, it's ridiculous. Ethereum is its own coin and its own code. So if you thought of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin is the train cars, but it's not the rails. Ethereum is the rails and the train. And you can write applications within Ethereum. It's my understanding it conducts business much faster. It's more efficient in conducting transactions than Bitcoin. And there's a hell of a lot more of it issued than 21 million Bitcoin. I believe there's 200 million Ethereum. Someone could check that. But it's a lot more. It's like a notable. So what do we focus on here? It's just whack-a-mole. It's just more whack-a-mole. We talk to people who retired who, if they take one hell of a financial setback, they're not going back to work to cover up what they lost. They're not able to do that, or they don't want to do that. It's just not in them to do that. And that's why I just say, in a world of uncertainty, look to yourself and see if the position of your financial savings positions align with your belief system, right? There's an old saying, a ship is safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. So excess capital, it's quite normal for it to be risked to get growth, to fetch gains, because you don't need the money. It's extra money. It's sitting somewhere. Maybe risk it reasonably for growth. But there's times where there's a storm on the ocean where your ship just can't make it through and you return to port. Another great saying is health is the most important wealth for anything, right? So you think about our economy. Why can't Tom Brady start for an NFL football team this year? Because he lost the resource of youth. When you look at our economy, it was once very healthy. And now with 36 trillion in debt, it is an absolute junkie. It's just a drug addict. It literally has to have that infusion of printed money every day, like Niagara Falls pouring into your economy every second of the day. And if it goes without, it goes into shock. It goes into cardiac arrest. It goes into a terrible situation. So to just think you can cut and think you can make the dollar great again, where's the math that says that's possible? The only idea I could offer is if Venezuela did this, they kicked I'm not saying we do any of this. It's just an idea to help you imagine something. So if Venezuela thought, we'll just take the oil that's ours anyway and kick all the oil companies out of the country, and then we'll just keep all that money. But they're terrible at getting oil off the ground. And now people are eating zoo animals to live in Venezuela, one of the richest oil nations on the planet. So when you think about can the government actually get revenue? Can it produce revenue rather than just cutting money out of the economy and taking that as taxes? Because to me, the government lives on the destructive side of the financial books. It destroys finances. Governments around the world owe $303 trillion to their people, really just stealing the future value of their currency in the year 3000 and bringing it into the moment. And they've been doing that hardcore for 30 years. And now it's it's just a sign of how inept governments are at actually managing problems. They just print money, which is stealing money from the future and bringing it into the moment, which means you get to the future, there is no money. And we're 3 cents in the dollar. That's all that's left to be printed. If it came out of a mine, 97% of the dollar mine is empty. So that should horrify people, because while they're running around with these financial gymnastics and ideas of more control and boxing people into a currency where there's zero privacy, zero. Is that what America was founded on? Privacy isn't the protection of secrecy. It's literally a pillar to autonomy. You are autonomous. It's like when you think, like, I was messing with my Coinbase account and I hadn't used it in forever. It was a time where I dabbled in crypto. It just, the hardcore drilling into your being to have that account, driver's license, all these things. They got to run your credit and prove your identity and all this stuff. Is the government really entitled to know everything I'm doing? No, that's not what our country was founded on. So moving entire human race onto a cryptocurrency system sounds horrifying to me. It doesn't sound like it's going to repair anything. It sounds like it's just going to continue to be a world of uncertainty and chaos, because no one has ever engineered any of this before. No one's been here before. Every day that passes is a day where no one has done this business type of dealings before. That should scare people.
Yeah, very true. And so outside of that, there are some small pockets of hope in reference to states as well as different commentary surfacing. And if I can, let me bring this on the screen here. We have Texas proposing gold and silver backed currencies to compete with fiat money or the Federal Reserve note. And so this is something that was put out there a year or two ago, but it seems to be getting more attention with 2 bills put forth as of recent that, once again, we'll see where it goes on a state level, but they have a depository. They've actually took the steps to bring back their gold over the last couple of years. So they have put forth effort to make gold great again within the state of Texas. And then, of course, we have other states that are also jumping on board, acknowledging and recognizing gold, either without capital gains tax or another method. So there are small pockets, but will it reach the federal level in time? I wouldn't hold my breath. But then also we have Judy Shelton, if I can bring this up, who wrote a interesting piece where she talked about bringing gold back with a gold redeemable note that the government could issue. And so she did a good job of elaborating on that in this article here. But so there's still talk out there of trying to relink gold and silver to the Federal Reserve note, or aka the dollar. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. But in the meantime, it's up to each individual, as referenced, that it's up to you to take precautionary measures to protect and preserve everything you worked hard for. And that's one of the reasons why I love connecting with you and getting your thoughts, because what you do is offer people some strategies. And for those who may be new, can you share with them a little bit of the opportunity and having a self-directed IRA and the things that they might go along with that as well?
Yeah. As the captain of your own financial vessel, if you're thinking the seas are looking pretty rough and some storm perhaps is directly over the horizon and you don't know that your financial vessel out on the open ocean would survive that storm, then it's time to come to port. And what port looks like is coming back into something real that you own. Or if one of those components go down in the system, then you don't have your money anymore, or you can't get to it, or you can't sleep at night, because especially for retirees, you're sipping off a financial oxygen tank on your back, right? You've packed a bunch of financial resources into this tank and you sip off that and you get to go on cruises and do whatever you want. You don't have to go to work. The minute that tank is empty because of some mistakes made by the government over a long period of time, or just something blows up because this doesn't look healthy to me and it hasn't been healthy in a long time, then what do you do next? Because you still got a beating heart in your chest. You got to pay bills, got to eat. So metal is real. I'm not in the business because I love gold and silver. I'm in the business because it solves a problem from the 4 choices that most people would consider, which is all of your money could be in cash in a safe at home. It could be in real estate. It could be in the financial world, or it could be in the vault. You could certainly have a mixture of that. How much of your retirement savings do you have in something that isn't made by man, can't be made in a lab, can't be printed? And one of the safety elements to precious metals might actually be that the government isn't going to screw around with it anymore, and they're not. Now, the whole thing could break apart. We've seen a lot of movement where the taxi cab system, for example, was the only way to get around, and it was no good. We didn't have much fun dealing with taxis. Uber came and broke that all up. Now Uber is pretty much the only dominant player in the space. So now they have all the power. The government has been away a company that owns everything. They have to get broken up. Yeah. So when that fails, power goes back to the states, and there might be 50 currencies or 13 different currencies in the country. What I'm looking at is that's what I see. I see global governments failing and going bankrupt and power falling back to the people. I don't see them ever as a success story. The damn government didn't come here first on the wooden ships. The people did, right? It's always the people. Governments can come and wreck a country like you saw in Cuba, like you've seen in Venezuela, like you've seen all over the place. Like you see in Russia. Those people have never had a shot. Never. It's czar after czar, and now it's Putin forever. And he's pretty much like a monarchy. So when you look at how this works, nature has its forces. It has its limits. My old saying is life on earth always going to be camping. And we have to look at that reality, that the ability to just have instant everything all the time is because the world is swimming, drowning in money. There's more money than homes. In the investment world, it's the minute you have an idea, here's $1 billion to go see if you can turn it into money. Having gold and silver, going, offenses win when they go where the defense isn't. We could watch that all day in football. And if you can't get away from the defense, then you don't win. You don't win. So what I say is power to the people in that Substack article is make the dollar great again, make your own dollars great again. You can't keep waiting for someone else to do it. No one can come to Washington and wave a magic wand over the bad finances we've suffered for over 30 years and all the stupid government decisions and make any of this different, better, heal, healthy. Can continue to get different. And that's what I mean. If you want to continue to be married up financially to a ton of uncertainty and no one's ever been here before, and the Federal Reserve's not poring over some blueprint left by a superior race that someone discovered in an Egyptian pyramid 50 years ago on how to manage the financial world out of chaos and hell, they're not poring over that blueprint. There isn't one. Oh my God, they're like writing the script as they go.
Yeah, very true. Paul, as always, I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts, analysis, and opinions on where we're at now. And as always, for those who might be new for the first time, you never know. If you're interested to find out more, you put together an interesting guide. It's also available on the channel as well. Links in the description if you guys want to find out more about some necessary intangibles when it comes to precious metals. Then I encourage you to download this as well. But as always, Paul, looking forward to connecting with you and see where we're at down the line, perhaps before the new year, and get some thoughts and analysis heading into the new year and see where we're at, price-wise, market activity, and things of that nature. Hopefully our world's still in a good place and this escalation in the Ukraine-Russian region doesn't pick up and Trump does have a smooth transition and we go back to having some type of promising economy. But once again, in the meantime, do everything you can at everybody to protect and preserve everything you worked hard for. So Paul Stone, thank you for joining us on RTD. As always, thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you again. Have a great Thanksgiving.
That as well, for sure.